and reactions. So, welcome this evening from Salima, where we are tonight. Ndimati tikulandireni kwina kulikonse kumene mukutionera madzulo ano, tili live pa Times Television, komanso pa Facebook, Times 360. Ndine Banda kukulandirani madzulo ano ku zokambirana zofunika kwambiri za mainjinia. Mutu wathu madzulo ano tikutcha kuti resource mobilization and investments, strategies for achieving Malawi Vision 2063. Nimanena kuti chaka ndi chaka ma engineers amakumana malo amodzi kuti akambirane, nthawi zina kumakhala masankho, komanso kumakhala madansi. Sitivina madzulo ananga. Mawa kodi? So mawa kuli dance kuno kusalima. So chifukwa chimenechi tikufuna tikulandireni ndi mtsutso ofunika kwambiri ma engineers amatichitira zinthu zazikulu mdziko muno, ndipo nkofunika kuti tidzikambirana tidzimva kuti chimachitika ndi chani. So mkatikati mwa zokambirana zathu ina amene mukutionera kunja kwa Salima komanso ngakhale kunja kwa dziko lino, tikhala tikupatsani nambala imene mukhoza kutumiza ndemanga zanu komanso kufunsa mafunso. Munonso mu holo mene tili at some point titsekula kuti you can give us a comment or reaction. Now, to start tonight, I would like to introduce our great panel, Dr. Engineer Roke Kaunda, who is Operations Director for Dika Construction. Dr. Kaunda is a professional engineer with more than 20 years experience in the engineering management, design and construction industry. He's currently the Operations Director for Dika Construction, a local top engineering construction company in Malawi. He has held this position for the past 15 years, managing a large number of projects on the Malawian landscape, ranging from building, civil, and irrigation works. He has vast experience and skills in project management, strategy, development, and implementation, and construction management. Roke, as he is popularly known, holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences, formerly called University of Malawi, the Polytechnic, an executive MBA from the Eastern and Southern Africa Management Institute, and a PhD from the University of Bolton, United Kingdom. I can go on and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together as we welcome engineer Dr. Roke Kaunda. For those of you who may not know you, just raise up your hand. Thank you. Also joining us on the panel tonight is Mr. Bernard Massey. Mr. Massey is General Manager for NBM Development Bank Limited. He's the bank is licensed by the Reserve Bank of Malawi and the wholly owned subsidiary of National Bank Malawi PLC, a position he has held since 1st January 2022. NBM Development Bank Limited is involved in the financing of various high-impact projects in Malawi. He holds a master's degree in business administration, MBA, with merit from Norwich Business School, University of East Anglia in the UK. He's a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants UK, member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Malawi, an affiliate of the Institute of Consulting UK, holder of bachelor's degree in social sciences, majoring in economics. I can also go on and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Bernard Massey tonight. For those of you who may not know you, just raise up your hand, sir. Thank you very much. Also joining us on the panel tonight is Ms. Stella Senti, Director of Optic Fiber Communications in ESCOM. She's an executive with more than 20 years of practical hands-on experience in telecoms industry, seizing opportunities and conceptualizing ideas, possessing a broad portfolio of skills for business turnaround. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from the University of Malawi, now MUBAS, and Master of Sciences in Telecommunications Management from the University of Bedfordshire in the UK. Currently works as Director of Optic Fiber Communications in ESCOM. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together as we welcome Ms. Stella Senti. Also joining us tonight on the panel is Mrs. Tikala Grace Katewera. Tikala Grace Katewera is a seasoned professional, currently serving as the Director of Liquid Fuels and Gas at the Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority, MERA. She brings over 27 years of extensive experience in the liquid fuels industry, having held diverse leadership roles across engineering, operations, business development, and regulatory compliance. Holding a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the Malawi University of Business and Applied Sciences, MUBAS, Tikala is also a qualified marketer through the Chartered Institute of Marketing, CIM, and she studied for her Master of Business Administration at the Eastern and Southern African Management Institute, ESAMI. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together as we welcome Mrs. Tikala Grace Katewera, Director of Liquid Fuels and Gas at Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority. We are meeting tonight to discuss a very important subject, resource mobilization and investments. We understand that the 2063 agenda has also put so much focus on this. But I want to start with you, Mr. Massey. What are the biggest financing gaps that Malawi is currently experiencing in as far as the engineering sector is concerned?
Thank you very much, Brian. The biggest gaps in financing projects in Malawi, firstly, is the lack of patient capital. When I say patient capital, I mean loans at concessional rates, grants that can be provided by donors. If you see the cost of funding in Malawi is quite high. We're talking about interest rates of somewhere around 30%. So for a project to be viable and attract investment at those rates, it is very high and prohibitive. So that takes away the viability of that project. But when you have patient capital, so you have loans at concessional rates, you can find on the market loans at, say, 11% or 10%, compared to the market rates at 30%. That's quite a substantial difference. That can make actually a difference on the funding for that project. So that's why I'm saying lack of patient capital. Secondly, for major projects, they will have an import component. You have to import machinery. Deka Construction is here. He knows what I'm talking about. You have to import machinery for various projects. And then we have the usual song that we don't have the forex. So that also impacts the country in terms of embarking on projects that can actually sustain and create an impact on the economy. Thirdly, I would talk about our energy needs. For you to go into large-scale manufacturing, to set up a large-scale manufacturing facility, you would need the requisite energy to power that facility. And with our prohibitive energy levels, that is also a predicament. It's also a hindrance that can enable the country undertake large or high impact projects in engineering. Thirdly, I'll talk about entrepreneurship. We need to have an entrepreneurial mind, and probably I want to challenge you, engineers, that if we all had that engineering spirit and we set up small, sizable manufacturing enterprises. As we're speaking now, ShopRite is about to exit, and that's an opportunity. So many things were being imported. We import toothpicks, we import cornflakes, and yet we have so much maize. We also import vegetables, but we have tomatoes that are rotting in Ncheu or Dedza. So if we as Malawians, have that entrepreneurial mind to produce whatever we can really make an impact, and also probably access that capital that is required to enhance this economy and make it a better place to live in. Let me stop.
Thank you. You mentioned two things there: energy,
four things.
Okay, four things, but I want to zero in on two: energy and forex. Dr. Kaunda, how are you managing on those two fronts?
Thank you very much. I'll start on the forex.
Yeah.
How are we managing is assuming that we're managing.
You're not managing.
The truth is we can't cope, because forex is a big challenge. I think earlier in the day, the engineers were actually sharing to say that it took them months to get a payment of $5,000 to a consultant. $5,000. In our case, if we go back to the past 2-3 years, it's been bad. We've gone the route of optional contracts. Optional contracts, you would know, where we negotiate with banks and they assure you to give you forex at a certain window. Even now, those optional contracts are dead. So literally, it's bad. So to answer your question, how are we managing? I wish we were managing.
Okay, but coming back to my earlier question, how do we achieve the 2063 agenda in as far as the engineering sector is concerned? The same question I asked Mr. Massey.
We really need to rethink our strategies and look at our setup critically, because the financing gap, as my colleague has been sharing, is really big. Malawi as a nation, our needs for 2063 are massive. For us to achieve that vision, we must do massive infrastructure projects. But that becomes a huge challenge if there is this financing gap. I know the banks, I've been chatting with colleagues from the bank, and one banker once said to me that they have got a lot of money just sitting and they don't know what to do with it.
Which money are you talking about?
Banks.
Okay.
Banks in general.
In Kwacha.
In Kwacha, yes.
Okay.
Yes. But you see, the challenge is what he has shared, to say that the cost of doing business in Malawi is very high. Until, as a nation, we come up with strategies that use the patient funds that he's talking about, interest rates are dropped, where maybe we come up with the concept of a development bank, where we as locals can borrow money at low interest rates. That will automatically drop the cost of projects. But right now the cost of projects is going high because there's so many factors we have to put in. So the cost of borrowing is number one. Yeah. Because of the high cost of borrowing, there's a high cost of the project. Number two, the lack of forex and everything else. To be honest with you, even in this scenario of lack of forex, we still have to find a way. And the black market or the parallel market would be the solution. But that comes with an impact on the cost of the actual project.
To those who may want to appreciate, how big is the forex issue as we speak today?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
The scale is yours.
I'll put it.
Because you mentioned that even to pay $5,000 is becoming a challenge.
It's a challenge,
yeah, so
yes.
They are policy makers watching us tonight.
Yes.
I would want them to appreciate the challenges that you are facing. Can you paint a picture? How big a problem is this one?
It's a massive problem. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would put it at 8.
8?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's quickly come back to Mera. Madam Katewera, the engineers are talking of challenges of energy. How do we achieve? Yes. How do we achieve 2063 agenda when we don't have enough energy as a country?
Thank you very much, Brian. Indeed, when you look at 2063 agenda, we're looking at agriculture commercialization, which requires energy, it requires engineering. We're looking at industrialization, again, that is requiring energy, still engineering being at the hub of it, and urbanization. I believe that as a country or as a people, we need to make deliberate policies or actualize existing deliberate policies to make sure that energy is available. When we talk of energy, we're not just talking about fuel, but we're also talking about electricity. We are talking about, like gas. There are a lot of policies that have already been put in place, which I believe that if those policies are properly enhanced, as a people, we'll be able to progress. I will talk of the, like the national energy policy, which already supports diversification, in terms of sources of energy, like renewable energy. And it does recognize LPG, which is, the cooking gas, as an alternative, source of energy. And, the regional interconnections in terms of power, interconnections or power sharing with our neighbors. You've got the national transport, plan, which is in place, encouraging, operators to focus on improving, the transport sector. Talking about rail, even if you want to talk about bringing fuel into the country, rail is a cheaper mode of transport. Whatever kind of cargo that you want to move is a cheaper mode of transport that can help in terms of, actualizing the dream that's sitting in the national energy policy. And a lot of other policies that are in place, even zeroing into the Vision 2063 itself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to come to you, Madam Senti from ESCOM. How are you meeting the demands coming from the engineering sector?
Thank you, Brian. My background is technology. So when people hear about ESCOM, they will think I'll be talking about electricity.
I was actually thinking the same.
Yeah. But I'll talk about technology.
Yes.
Yeah. As you might have already said, regarding the Agenda 2063 and, of course, the shortage of forex, the three pillars that make up the Agenda 2063, the urbanization, industrialization, agriculture, productivity, and commercializations, all these actually are enabled by technology. We are living in the fourth industrial revolution, where everybody else across the globe is actually flowing with it. For us in Malawi, although we have shortages of forex, but we need to think outside the box as engineers. We need to think how can we maneuver around the shortage of forex. We have got our universities, MUBAS, MAST, and all other private universities and public universities. We can deliberately actually tune our programs so much so that some of the things that we import, we can start making them ourselves here. The Agenda 2063, as I said, one of the pillars is actually industrialization. That is a deliberate move for a robust manufacturing industry. Coming from a technology background, what I see there is actually an industry that will incorporate automation and all that. That means that instead of us really relying on the outside for maybe cars, I read an article some 2 months ago where a young boy, maybe about 19 years old, built a car in Zimbabwe rather. We can also do the same here. We have got brains in Malawi. We can maneuver around. And now coming back to where I'm coming from and how we are maneuvering around with a shortage of forex, it is actually the same issue. It is not leaving anybody behind. We are also struggling here and there, where most of the times we have to look at other ways of handling issues, sometimes deliberately putting in policies that might kind of a workaround of the shortage of forex. Sometimes if you wanted to buy a shirt from England, you can just go to Limbi and buy one. So those are the things that
where in Limbi? Because it also depends on where you're buying the shirt.
Yes, there's a slogan which says best buy Malawi.
Okay.
I think it's time that we embrace that and start using our own resources in Malawi and only import only those items or materials or resources that we cannot find them locally in Malawi.
Thank you. I want to come back to you, Mr. Masi, because you are the money person on this panel. What policies could better be used in as far as domestic resources are concerned? We have pension funds, SACCOs, and development banks. And these are all into engineering-led projects like power plants, roads, and industrial parks. How best can we maneuver as a people?
Thank you very much, Brian. I'll not dwell much on policies, but I'll try to be more pragmatic.
Okay.
And say, what should we do
to
mobilize resources for industrial production and to help uplift the economy? You may recall that some time back we had the Malawi Development Corporation, which is a development finance institution. I think most people are aware of commercial banks as providers of capital, but you have other financial institutions that are more suitable to provide that sort of patient capital that is needed for projects. So you have development banks. So in Malawi currently we have 4 development banks. We have MIC, we have EDF, we have NIF. These are public DFIs. So we call them either development banks or development finance institutions.
Okay.
But they are the same institutions.
Okay.
And then we have one privately owned development bank, which is where I come from. NBM Development Bank, which is wholly owned by National Bank of Malawi.
Okay.
It's an SME development bank, so our focus is on SMEs, but we are privately owned, which makes us unique in this region. We are quite unique. We are the only one in Malawi and probably within the region. So these DFIs play a vital role in the industrialization.
What specific SMEs are you referring to? Because there are a lot of people watching us tonight. They would want to call you tomorrow.
Yeah, so we focus in several sectors. If you are operating in agribusiness, energy, health, education, manufacturing, mining, water and sanitation, we are financing SMEs within those spaces.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me continue. So
yeah,
these DFIs play a vital role in the industrialization of any economy. So I've talked about having 4, but what needs to be done is to increase their capacity, especially the public DFIs, is to increase that capacity for them to be able to access more capital and carry out major projects within the country. Because of the long-term nature of these projects, commercial banks are not suited to carry out these projects because commercial banks, their source of funding is very short-term. They use short-term deposits. Okay. But what you need is long-term capital that is affordable. And this capital is housed within these development banks. So what needs to be done, as I said, is to ensure that these DFIs, these public DFIs, are properly capacitated to carry out the national interest. If you look at Botswana, Botswana was mostly built by development banks. They played a major role there. And what other countries have done is to establish sector-specific DFIs. So you have countries like Namibia that have agriculture banks. So their focus is just to finance agriculture projects. And then you also have other DFIs that are called industrial banks, industrial development finance institutions, that focus on manufacturing, on local manufacturing, enhancing capacity of local manufacturers. That's the direction that we need to take if we are actually to ensure that we don't import everything. We need to spur our own local production. And one way is to establish an industrial bank to make sure that manufacturers are well funded. But it needs capital sourcing, because capital is the major issue. We may have the capital locally, which is in Kwacha, but as I said, we need to import machinery and what have you for these projects. And it comes back to the issue of Forex. So if we don't actually resolve this Forex issue, it will be difficult for us to get out of, it will be difficult for the country to move forward in terms of industrialization or agricultural commercialization. When you talk of mega farms have got, you need machinery to carry out, the primary production. You need machinery to do the value addition. Yeah. How are you going to acquire machinery for production or machinery for value addition if you don't have any Forex? So we need that starter pack of Forex to import machinery and then establish mega farms. And then secondly, we also need incentives, especially for the private sector, to fund such projects. For example, there can be incentives provided to commercial banks to spur local production. Maybe I'll talk about tax incentives, or it could be the Reserve Bank providing other incentives for commercial banks to fund local manufacturing, to put in more resources into local production. So such incentives can also help to ensure that domestic resources are properly utilized.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, Mr. Masi, in a moment. But you are talking about incentives. How can we incentivize local contractors? I want to hear from you, Mr. Contractor, Engineer Kaunda. How can we incentivize local contractors, engineering firms, and innovators to mobilize capital and invest in Malawi's infrastructure development?
Thank you, Brian. I was listening with great interest when my fellow money person, the banker, yes, about the development banks and all that. I believe we'll get back to that. But coming to your question, we need a deliberate approach to create an environment that allows the local contractors, engineering firms, innovators to mobilize capital. Like he's saying, I think the environment in which we're operating in is quite restrictive. And I'm pleased to hear that there are these opportunities from development banks. You need to expound more on that. But what we are exposed to right now in terms of financing is the commercial banks. And the commercial banks, it's very restrictive. But what incentives can we provide as a nation? I think, number one, we have to have deliberate packages. We have to have packages that align to the local contractors, that align to the local engineering firms. Packages that allow them to borrow at better rates on the market. I always give this example to say, like, for example, us in the construction industry, when we're doing a project, there is always some money that is retained by the client, which we call retention. Okay. This money is designed that in the event that there is some challenges along the way, or there might be something to be fixed down the line, that money is held to make sure that those things are covered. But in the event that there is nothing of that sort, that money is given back to us. And chances are most times it is after a year or 2 years. It depends on the conditions of contract. But now in that type of scenario, this is what happens. I have a contract with her, and as she's paying me my invoices, she's retaining that money for that safety. But that money, I'll only access it after a year. But keep in mind, I will have a contract with her, I'll have a contract with another person, then another person. Suppose I have a contract with 10 people. It means all these 10 people are holding money that I could have been using. If we had a setup or a scenario where all this money for all the contractors, all this is being pulled into one avenue, one place, we have generated capital in principle. And then us as contractors, we go and borrow against that very same pool of money that is going to be mine after 1 year, 2 years. That can be negotiated to be an incentive to a local contractor or a local engineering firm to borrow at a marginal rate, because it's my money. It is still going to come back to me after a year. But it allows me to do a lot more before I get that money back. So I believe we need to create these setups that allow the local companies to have platforms where they can maneuver outside the commercial landscape that we have. The commercial landscape that we have is very restrictive.
Okay. Do you want to react to that? Because it's pertaining banks. Or we can move on. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about public-private partnerships, PPPs, in the engineering sector. How can we, as a country, strengthen PPP framework to attract investments in large-scale engineering projects? What comes to my mind is energy, water, and transport. I want to take this question to Mera, where Mrs. Tikala Grace Katewera, you are the right person to comment on that tonight.
Thank you very much, Brian. I believe yes, and I can comment on this in terms of encouraging public-private partnerships. These indeed need to be enhanced with frameworks that de-risk this kind of partnerships. There are a lot of risks because of the kind of environment that we're operating in, like discussed already, be it financing issues, forex and stuff. But at the same time, when we look at this, we also want to encourage private players to participate more, to invest more. It goes back to the issue of, financing again, because that's the biggest elephant in the room. So it goes back to the issue of financing. Yes, we're seeing most of the projects being financed by, the public sector, or indeed donors with minimal contribution from the private sector. So we need policies and frameworks in place that will encourage the private sector to invest. Then we go back to the issue of incentivizing the private sector to participate, safeguarding their investment, putting policies in place that will protect their investments, putting policies in place that can even protect from, political, whatever, issues that come with political violence and stuff that are not yet covered at the moment, that needs to be looked at, because to some extent it does hold back, private investors. And again, I'm looking at empowering the private sector to participate in the PPP, for them to have, reasonable contributions, reasonable take home, revenue for them. So you're talking of a fair platform where they can play, but it's all about policies that will support the private sector. I'm focusing a lot on the private sector, Brian, in terms of PPP, because in most cases you see that the private partners are a little disadvantaged because the private sector will be the bigger entity in such arrangements.
Thank you. Nkuteka kuti mwango tipeza kumene we are focusing our conversation madzulo ano. We are speaking to you from Salima, where the 2025 engineering conference is taking place. and we are having a very good conversation, mobilization and investment strategies for achieving Malawi Vision 2063. It's not just our conversation. We want to come back to our audience and take some questions. But before we do that, Madam Senti from ESCOM, what lessons can we learn from regional examples where engineering institutions helped structure technically sound, investor-friendly projects? After that question, we'll take comments and reactions from our engineers tonight. Madam Senti.
Thank you, Brian. Indeed, there are lessons that we can learn from engineering bodies, this part of Africa. Engineering bodies have a lot of work to do in the construction industry, in all other projects that might happen. They can act as an independent technical experts for big projects. They can advise to, they can actually offer to do feasibility studies for big projects. Normally people from the banks, they would want to see a feasibility study report that has been developed by experts in the field. So if engineering bodies in engineering body in Malawi, the MEI, can also take that responsibility to do feasibility study for big projects, that can also be a bonus on the projects. And again, monitoring of the whole project, and of course the operation of the project as well, to make sure that the standards have been observed throughout the project period. It is also my thinking that engineering body in Malawi, the MEI, together with the government and other regulatory bodies, can come up with standard bidding documents that can cover all areas of the project from start to finish. And again, on the same note, projects are not about engineers only. It's about financing, it's about legal, and of course engineering. Sometimes it is better to have a team of all professionals, especially for big projects. And again, coming back to Mr. Mas here, the banks, most of the times, they would want to see a project that is backed up by professionals. And again, normally with big projects, it is good to come up with a risk register, spelling out what risk is there, those that can be foreseen, and of course the mitigation, what can be done to mitigate those risks. It is actually good to do so for big projects. Coming back to the Forex issue,
Yeah.
I would rather also comment on the use of local content. Instead of hiring a consultant from RSA, why not hire them from Malawi? Instead of hiring a consultant from UK, why not hire them from Malawi? So I think even in larger projects, the engineering body in Malawi can actually have a pool or register of consultants that can be hired for different projects. Thank you.
Thank you. In case you would want to send us a question on the, those of you who are watching us tonight, the number is 09885 22800. 09885 22800. You can send your question, reaction to that number, and we'll ask the panel to answer your questions. Let's take some comments. We have done the first half of our conversation. Let's take some comments, reaction, whether you agree or disagree. It's also allowed. We'll take 3 comments. Any takers? Comments, reaction this far? There is a hand there. Yes, sir, I recognize you. You are the second one. Let's take 3 comments. Yes, and you, sir, thank you. Please introduce yourself, and if it's possible, tell us where you are working.
All right, good evening, everyone.
If you may stand, please. Yes.
My name is Wiseman Chitimbe. I'm a registered graduate civil engineer. I'm currently with Blantyre Water Board. So my question is directed to Mr. Masi. Thank you for bringing to light about the DFIs. And also, Engineer Kaunda talked about the development banks being essential. But then the question mainly lies on the viability of a state-backed DFI to fund large-scale infrastructure projects. I'm looking at it from a perspective that our neighbors in Tanzania, they just completed the John Magufuli Bridge, and it took them 5 years, but the funding was internal. They didn't have any external donors. So with our current economic state, what's the viability of this state-backed DFIs to fund a massive project like that? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have the microphone this side. The gentleman in checked shirt. This side.
My name is Dave Musawa Simon. Mine is just a comment. I hope the policymakers are watching. And my comment is, we can have hundreds of these kinds of meetings and talking about and discussing, but if there are no deliberate policies to be put in place so that we can start moving forward, we can yield nothing, even if we reach 2063. What I'm thinking now is, let's have policies that will help us to have infrastructures that may end up into production, so that this issue of forex, it may end. Otherwise, we can have these meetings, but we'll get nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one for this hour, the gentleman in black.
Yes, thank you very much. I am Sanmek Salima from ESCOM Transmission. Mine is just a comment. You have talked about engineers lacking entrepreneurial skills. I want to comment on that. Indeed, we lack entrepreneurial skills because at college, they emphasize on technical skills, unlike the entrepreneurial skill. So because we also get used to to solving maths, solving equations, so we view entrepreneurs as something for business people, while we ourselves, we just need to work for them. So this one is also killing the heart of entrepreneurial skill in engineering. Again, on the same, I also have another school of thought, because you can see, for you to start an entrepreneurial investment, it is very capital intensive. For example, for you to become a civil engineer, you need very expensive machinery, which you can't graduate from college and straight away buy such a machinery. You still need to have money. So you can say the problem is a twofold issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There are so many questions that are coming through. Tiffany, kuchokera ku Malingunde. Pali zitukuko zambiri zimene zinayambika sizikutha. Kodi anthu ake ndi amene asonkhana kumeneko wakuchedwetsa. Tiffany from Malingunde. Ndinu muchedwetsa mabridge. Dr. Kaunda.
Allow me to answer Tiffany from Malingunde. Tiffany from Malingunde ndesera kwa kanchichewa. Poti fusula bula nchichewa. Kuda amene tikuchedwetsa zinthu ndamene tili kunofe.
Yeah.
Ayi. Ndi ankachoncho. Pali air ndi ayi. Ayi ponena kuti chimene ndingathe kuwaunikira nchonena kuti chinthu chimodzi chimene chikutivuta ngati dziko ndi kunena kuti sitikhala ngati tikudziwa chenicheni chimene tikufuna pa nthawi yake yoyenerera. Mapeto ake timapeza kuti tayamba zinthu zambirimbiri zosagwirizana ndi thumba lathu mmene ilili. Timashosha ndewu zambiri thumbamo zosagwirizana. Tikuyenera kuti tizafike pa mlingo onena kuti tidule nzere pakati pa ndale ndi chitukuko. Chitukuko chikhale chitukuko. Ngati dziko tigwirizane kunena kuti agenda yathu ya chitukuko ndi iyi ndipo tiyende chonchi. Koma tikalowesapo ndale imafuna kunena kuti kuna kulikonse kuoneke kuti kukuchitika kanthu. Tikambopanga choncho timapeza kuti ndi thumba sizikugwirizana. Nde mapeto ake imapeza kuti ntchito zija sizikuyenda. Fa ntchito iliyonse kuti iyende kumalawi kuno kuti nene moona mtima ndi ndalama. Ifeyo ngati maengineer sitingagwire ntchito popanda ndalama. Makontractor sitingagwire ntchito popanda ndalama. Tikagwira ntchito tilipiridwe. Apo B tiwena tikabwereke. Ndikabwereka bwanji pa 30 chakuti percent kwa bwanawo.
I think funso lokuti tingwerekeza bridge kaya ndi nsewu. Role ya engineer mwina anthu samamvetsetsa nditi, because that's why akunena kuti kodi ndinuyo mukuti chedwetsa, because anthu amamva kuti nsewu wakuti wapatsidwa ndalama. Pali zitukuko, for example Mombera University yapatsidwa ndalama ndi zina zote. I'm just giving an example. So anthu achina Tiffany amamva zimenezo kuti ndalama zaperekedwa. So akuchedwetsa ndi ndani?
Chabwino tiunikire motere kuti akanena kuti nsewu kuti kapena project yakuti tayipatsa ndalama, kawiri akamayankhula choncho chimakhala ndalama za mu budget. Budget ndi kuti kupereka ndalama ku project kuti munthu akugwira ntchito ndi zinthu ziwiri zosiyana. Apereka ndalama mu budget. Ife timagwira ntchito, tikagwira ntchito timalipiridwa pa ntchito imene tagwirayo. Nde chimachitika nchiona kuti pa nthawi imene mukugwira ntchito, inu mwagwira ntchito koma ndalama sikutani, sikubwera kwa inu, sikulipiridwa. Ndi pamene ntchito ije imapanga safa. Koma ndalama mu budget zinayikidwamo. Kwinako ine sindingayankhireko nanga si ndi kwa budget.
So ndizotheka kuzika ndalama mu budget inu nkukagwira ntchito koma osalandira. Ndipo ndi zimene zimachitika. Ndi zimapita kuti ndalamazo
ayankha budget yo.
Mwamaliza?
Ife tingoyankha zimene zimabwera kwa ife. Inu mmagwira bwinobwino ntchito. Ife timagwira. Ndipo ine ndima challenge kunena kuti maengineer ndipo ndiyankhula maengineer anzanga wonse macontractor. Pali ndalama, palibe chimene chingati lake.
Koma sakuti mmanyanyala mmachotsa zinthu kupita nazo kuti
timanyanyala nkuchotsa zinthu pamene sisi kulipiridwa. Chifukwa pa nthawi imene ya Brian ine ndili pa project yanu, ndayika mashine anga pamene paja, ndagwira ntchito inu simukundilipira. Mmene ndikutero amasa kundimbira foni kuti komatu kuno ilikonso ina yoti udakagwira. Koma ndikukanika kugwira kuja chifukwa mashine anga ali kwa inu kumene inu simukundilipira, simundipatsa ndalama. Nditani kodi? Ndinyamuka kwanuko ndipita kagwira kumene ndikuzoti akandilipira. Chifukwa ineyo ndi ana ndili banja kunyumba kuti ndidyetse.
Acha bwino. Amasi, I think there were some ndizotheka to do a project out ku Tanzania kwa mangidwa bridge popanda madola. Smart locally resourced funds.
I think what he meant is locally available resources. We are not sure whether they imported some of the materials or not, but we'll just take it as if the bridge was built using locally available resources. That is also available here. We have the local resources, but the resources may not be adequate and the right type of resources to undertake long-term projects. Because, as I said, building a bridge or a big bridge is a long-term project. And then, as I said, you need funding that is aligned on the long term. You cannot use short-term funds to finance long-term projects. So that's why I said you cannot use depositors' money, because commercial banks have got depositors' money that are demand deposits that are short-term. So that's why I talked about DFIs. DFIs have got a different funding model whereby mostly they have long-term capital. So the capital in Malawi is available, but to what extent? What sort of projects can we undertake using local resources? And there's also a model in banking that's called syndication. You don't have to do it yourself. There's collaboration. Banks can co-fund projects. So EDF, Mike, even ourselves, can pull resources together and fund a big project, because probably one institution may not have all the resources to undertake that project. But what we face here in Malawi, as I've said, is we always have something to import. I'm sure if we're building a bridge, I am not an engineer, disclaimer. I'm sure if we are to build a bridge, we need to import some steel. So we cannot import steel using Malawi Kwacha. We need Forex to import the steel. So if there's that challenge, how are we going to build that bridge? So that is the major problem that we may have. I may not know in Tanzania what happened, whether they make steel locally or steel is locally available, and then they were able to construct that bridge purely using local resources. But here, as we know, if we can import toothpicks, surely we need to import steel to construct that bridge. But in terms of the Kwacha resources, we can pull resources together, we as DFIs, and put into a project and make it go live. But the issue is to what magnitude, to what extent. Yeah, but it's possible.
There were 3 interventions that we received. I don't know if any member of the panel would want to respond or we proceed. Others were just comments. I think one was a question. Dr. Kaunda.
I think there was one comment that came from my brother somewhere there on policies.
Yeah.
I really want to say that in as far as policies are concerned, Malawi as a nation, we have got a lot of policies and great documents. But I think what's lacking for us as a nation is the implementation, bringing things to life. Policies are there. I think he was stressing on we need to have policies after what we have discussed. To be honest with you, the policies are there. If we talk about local funding, funding of projects for different type of projects, you look at the PPP Act, it clearly specifies the avenues that can be used to fund projects. But the question should be, why are we not funding them? A good example is the Salima Waterway project, which we have. This project was awarded in 2016, but only started implementation in 2022, 2023. We lost 7 years in just dilly-dallying. That's our biggest problem. Until we move from looking at the black and white in the paper to actual implementation, then Malawi will start making strides.
How can engineers ensure that projects are bankable and align with investor requirements while remaining technically sound and sustainable? Who want to take that question? Okay, you start.
Thanks, Brian. I'll start. A bankable project must have proper documentation. I'll talk about feasibility study paper that talks about the viability of the project. On the other hand, you also have to look at what the investor is looking for and make sure that you tick all those boxes. The project also must have a list of professionals available for the project. And again, the project must also have a risk register that speaks to all the dangers that you have foreseen and, of course, mitigation measures. Brian, let others finish.
Okay, yes, Mr. Masi.
Thank you, Brian. For big projects, before banks can come in, what they need to see are feasibility studies. So you have, first of all, a technical feasibility study, and you also have a financial feasibility study. after the engineers come in and put together that technical feasibility study, then the numbers have to come in through a financial feasibility study. So engineers are actually required for them to have an input into that feasibility study. Sometimes we as banks, we may require an engineer's report. To give you a practical example, we are NBM Development Bank is funding an organic fertilizer manufacturing plant. We are doing a syndication with the Export Development Fund in Banda. So this is a highly engineering project because it's got heavy machinery. The machinery is very heavy. And we needed an engineer's report just to confirm that that machine can actually run and produce the fertilizer, the organic fertilizer that we're talking about, because we as banks, we don't have that expertise. So we specifically requested for an engineer's report. And for such projects, yes, indeed, engineers play a very significant role. Thank you.
I don't know if you want to comment on the same, Mrs. Katewera, but also, as you're commenting on that one, what engineering subsectors, energy, manufacturing, ICT, transport, or housing, should be prioritized to maximize Vision 2063?
Thank you very much, Brian. Let me just comment on the earlier question in terms of bankability of projects.
Yes.
Maybe one thing that as engineers we must always look at is to be able to integrate sustainability in our projects. That's a social factor. You know, the environmental issues, our projects must be climate resilient. I mean, look at Malawi. We are susceptible to a lot of environmental issues, climate change factors. So our projects, they must be, climate resilient. Ms. Senti spoke about risk register. I just want to comment that beyond the risk register, then we should be able to do a risk analysis and mitigation measures in place to give confidence to, be it the bank or if there's a donor, to say, okay, there are these risks, this is insurance in place, and these are the mitigations that were in place. You have asked about what was that again?
The question is, which engineering subsectors should be prioritized?
I take it that we should start with energy. Okay. Whatever you want to think of in terms of engineering, there's nothing that you'll be able to do without energy. And yes, transport, because there's need for mobility. If you want to think of industrialization, you want to think of urbanization, building houses and, infrastructure, you also need to have strong base in terms of ICT. So when you talk energy, it means you've got electricity, you've got fuel and what have you in as far as energy is concerned. And then you've got transport. You've got the technology that's helping you in terms of designing and whatever, that's where the ICT comes. And then you can begin to talk of industrialization. You have a plant, you have manufacturing, institutions and stuff, and then you begin to think of building. So I would prioritize energy, and then
there was a talk of special allocations to the construction, engineering industry, in as far as fuel is concerned. Do you want to comment on that? Are you supporting them as they wanted? Because there are some times that we run out of fuel and projects do store, and they have asked for special consideration. Are you comfortable to comment on that?
Brian.
Okay, thank you very much. I respect your position.
Thank you.
Dr. Kaunda, you would want to comment on the same, or we move on? But the question is, which engineering subsectors should we prioritize?
I would agree with her to say that energy would be the priority. After energy, you can now start looking at the other subsectors like transportation, because you need connectivity for all these things to happen. Then
Yeah.
you've got the ICTs and all that. So I believe I'm aligned to her line of thinking.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll take 2 more comments. We have 10 minutes to wind up. We'll take 2 more comments and the reaction, and thereafter we'll have the closing remarks. I recognize you, sir, and you, sir. We can take 1 more, so we'll take 3. And you, sir. So let's start with this gentleman here.
Sekomo Brad, so I'm Lovemo Banda from Alliance One. Mundole ndifuse chichewa. Tikatengera in the 1970s and 80s. And that how South Africa ananivuto kuti amadala kwambiri imported oil kapena petroleum or fuel. So because of my sanctions, my companies anasiya wapatsa oil. So which means they had a challenge in terms of the energy part. So SASO inagwirisa technology yaku Germany, in which they were burning the coal kupanga produce the petroleum which they needed. Now we have seen Takanma comments about Forex. What should we do now? What are the low hanging fruits? I mean, coming from here, because of it as engineers, we are doing this because we don't have Forex. Otherwise, we have go camp without having the solutions. So maybe the panel would turn this to brainstorm. What are the low hanging fruits? Zeko.
Thank you. Yes, at the back there, and there was another hand this side. Whilst we are waiting for the microphone, we have received a number of text messages. I'm Dayton Ganiza here at Area 49, Best Oil Station. My question is, what roles are these engineers doing to help in reinforcing and mitigating natural hazards, apart from controlling deforestation by encouraging people to be using cement blocks than bent bricks? What is their emphasis? The second one, I'm Chris. I would like to understand the role Malawian engineers are doing or forecasting on the Cassia rutile chunk, which is a large source of forex, which is scarce at the moment and has no immediate solution. Lonjezo Bingason. On local capacity development, we have seen a lot of Chinese companies and other foreign companies coming to Malawi to do some works and investments that could be locally done. How can Malawi Engineering Institution develop local capacity in engineering and infrastructure development to reduce reliance on foreign expertise and promote economic growth in Malawi? We'll come to those questions in a moment, but let's hear from one of our engineers tonight. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Charles Juambo. I run a local firm, Site Engineering. I think there have been some very good discussions tonight. I think the whole purpose of this conference was to ensure that the team in finance and the team in the engineering side have open and honest conversations about the opportunities that are available in Malawi and beyond in terms of resolving some of the issues that we have locally. So my question is going to be a bit broad in the sense that from Bernard's side, in terms of mobilization of resources and financing, you mentioned that there's a couple of DFIs, and then we also know that there's pension fund. I think pension funds talk about trillions of kwacha that are available from some of the facilities that they have that they've been raising over the years. And then you can see that there's a gap between the amount of money that's being raised on the finance side and the amount of money that is required on the engineering side. So if you look at some of the projects that maybe Rocky will be talking about, some of these pension funds can obviously provide that financing. And then in terms of de-risking those investments, how is it that the teams that are sitting with the financing are working with the engineering sector to ensure that you talk to each other? You say, okay, there's a lot of things that you need to import to make sure that your project works. But the question is, have you spoken to the engineers to say, if we give you the cash, do you have strategies to de-risk some of these issues that we are seeing from the finance side? So this, I think, is one of the reasons that we had this conversation from the organizing committee to ensure that some of these things are spoken about early on. And I think one of the last questions that we got was on capacity building and how the country is working towards mitigating some of these risks from building capacity, which is our second sub-theme. And then, so from finance side, are you also trying to fund that tunnel? Because this money has been built up over a long period of time. Can you provide financing in terms of trying to build that capacity to ensure that local institutions or local individuals can then minimize the risk of having to import those things, so you bring down that forex risk over time instead of trying to look at short-term solutions? Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was one more here, or we proceed? Yes, I remember you, sir. Let's finish with you, sir.
Yes, Wyson Msachi from Katabe. I'm working like an engineer at ESCO. I think my incentive will go to Mr. the engineer Kaunda. He added a certain point of which I want just to elaborate a little bit. One of the things that make Malawi to be where we are now, and we are seeing darkness all over. We have been at independence now, it's about 61 years, which I would say that if you were to look at things, they are not the way they are. I'll concur with Engineer Kaunda. He has said, when you are doing things, we don't collaborate to each other to say, Mr. Brian is good at talking. I need to collaborate with Brian so that whenever I need somebody to talk, it means Mr. Brian will talk much more for me because I'm not good at talking. Now we have the engineer Kaunda. He is good at bringing in like things like equipment in terms of caterpillars and the like. I don't have those things. Why should I not collaborate with him, the engineer Kaunda, so that my job or so that my contract should go well? You will find that Malawi, now as I'm talking, if you are not in government, you can't get a project. Are we aiming to improve Malawi? Why not? I am not related to somebody else who has an upper hand somewhere. We may have all of the incentives or whatever is there. But if we don't love, what I should say is, if we can all love Malawi, Malawi is our own country. Malawi is where we were born in. But we Malawians, we don't love our country. That's why things are the way they are.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. We don't have much time. What we are going to do is I'll give you some 2 minutes, and in concluding, you can remember any of the comments that have come through. There is an issue of hiring expatriates. There is an issue of rutile, and there is an issue from Kadabe on incentives and collaboration. I'll start with you, Madam, who will go this way. Your concluding remarks and 60 seconds.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for the 60 seconds as well. My number one comment is about policy alignment. Actually, Engineer Kaunda said it, that we already have policies in place in Malawi, but the challenge is the implementation, which is true. So if we have policies, it is actually our mandate as engineers to make sure that we enforce it together with the government, so that at least policies are aligned with the implementation. I will also emphasize on my point, use of local content. That one, I will not drop it. I also comment about it that we have to embrace it. We should be using local content, our own people, our own resources. We've got lots of raw materials. And I think Agenda 2063 is all about converting raw materials into adding skills to the raw materials that can be useful to further our lives and our nation, Malawi. So let's use our local content in Malawi, use our people, use our resources, use our raw materials. The third one is about reforms. Mr. Banker here talked about a very good point, development banks, investment banks. I think it is all about reforms. So maybe if we can also emphasize that reforms are necessary, and if they can be put into use, that would be a better step towards development.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brian. I will not respond to Charles because I already have 60 seconds. But I think I want to talk about the Kasia rutile. From the question that came, that we have that rutile in the ground, why are we poor? So sometimes you get these thoughts, whether it's feasible or not, but you say, but is it not possible, to ask a mining company out there to do that investment now and give us in advance, for example, $5 billion in advance against the future cash flows from that project, and then say, okay, you can mine the rutile up to a value of 10 billion. Then you have recovered the 5 billion that the country received. Would that be something that is feasible? Anyway, food for thought. Because we cannot be poor when we have $1 trillion in the ground and then we are lacking 5,000 for him to pay a consultant. It may be something to look at for the powers that be. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Katawera.
Thank you very much, Brian. I believe there are two things I want to comment on. I want to comment on the issue of policy and the issue of energy that does not require forex. I think there was a gentleman who spoke about coal and other sources of energy. In terms of policies, I want to agree with Engineer Dr. Rocky and everybody that said we have very good policies, but as Malawi Engineering Institution, I believe that we need to take a position where we are into capacity building for policymakers. They need to understand, they need to be trained, be it regulators in the engineering sector. They also need to be trained to understand capacity building is key for Malawi Engineering Institution. I believe that's a role that we need to take up. In terms of the sources of energy that do not require forex, which I believe that would help us save on the forex and also have the energy that we require, we have ethanol in the country. I know it's a technology that's still being worked on, but ethanol performs just as good as petrol. The still tests being conducted, but I believe that we're going into a solution. We have biodiesel, which is also locally, produced, which can effectively work, like diesel. For gas, we're struggling with LPG. I know it's also because of the forex situation. There are efforts being put in to make sure that the LPG is available. In terms of that, we have biogas from cattle dung and whatever that we have, which there are frameworks in place there are things being done to make sure that it's of use. So these are things that, as a people, we must open our minds to and be ready to adopt. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kaunda?
Thank you, Brian. 60 seconds is too little, but we have to wrap up. I think the bottom line is we really need to embrace mindset change. I think when we look at the Vision 2063, mindset change is there. And one member was asking about what are the low-hanging fruits that we can be discussing. What I can simply say is for all of us within our respective disciplines as engineers, civil, mechanical, electrical, ICT, you name it, we all need to critically look at the various sectors and find what can we substitute with a local resource. We really need to look at that. We need to look at what can we cut off from Forex and bring it to the local content. That's something very important. But another thing which I need to stress on is, I've been reading most of the documents. There's the Import and Export Act, and in that act they specify that there should be a center, an import and export center in Malawi. And if you look at the composition of the center, engineering is not at the table. There's economists, marketing, finance, but there's no engineering. And if you look at many policy entities, engineering is not at the table. We find ourselves at a scenario where we have to firefight when things have already been done, grants have been signed, and then we have to react. If we want engineers, if we want companies not to come with foreigners, someone mentioned the Chinese, we should be at the table sitting and signing that grant with the Chinese aid, which we will specify to say local engineers will do the job.
Thank you. Well, on that note, we conclude our conversation tonight from the Lakeshore District of Salima. We were focusing on resource mobilization and investment, strategies for achieving Malawi Vision 2063. And in this discussion, I was honored to have Mrs. Tikala Grace Katewera, Director of Liquid Fuels and Gas at Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority, MERA. We were also joined tonight by Ms. Stella Senti, Director of Optic Fiber at Director of Optic Fiber Communications in ESCOM. Also on the panel tonight, Mr. Bernard Massey, General Manager for NBM Development Bank Limited. Lastly, but not least, we were joined by Engineer Dr. Roque Kaunda, Operations Director for Dika Construction. My name is Brian Banda. From all of us here in Salima, we want to thank you, our engineers. You have been a very wonderful audience, and we would like also to thank all of you who were watching our conversation tonight. Thank you for your inputs, questions, and reactions. Let's give a final round of applause to me and our panel tonight.